thing I think I've learned is just to experiment. So often, particularly if you're wanting to sort of step outside perhaps what you've always done, finding a way to just try something and just see whether you enjoy it. You know, that can be saying, can I go and shadow somebody in your team, or I'd actually like to go and do some volunteering in an area that you want to learn about. And then the other thing that I personally do is when I'm trying to make quite a big move, it can seem quite daunting. So I try and sort of break it down into manageable steps. You know, maybe the ultimate aim might seem sort of too ambitious, but I'll sort of think, well, what can I do to help take me down that route? I'm a huge fan of mentoring and also network groups, and I've benefited from them throughout my career. When I was at Lloyds Banking Group, I was the co-chair of Breakthrough, which is the women's network. And one of the best things we did was something which we call Footprints in the Snow, where senior women's in small groups of say 12 people. And one of the best conversations that came out of that was one of the women was saying, I'm about to go on maternity leave. I know my career's going to stand still. I'll probably have to take a demotion when I come back. And there was another woman across the room and she said, are you mad? You know, I got promoted during my maternity leave. Both times I went off, I got promoted, and here's my little black book, and these are all the people you need to talk to manage your life differently. So I think at different stages of your career, mentoring groups can be really valuable. I've had some great allies across my career. So one of the first allies I had was when I was at Dixon's, and the group financial controller gave me a huge promotion when I was still in my 20s. And he just said, you know, she's a really good, talented person, she can do the job, and I'm going to lend her my brand. I'm going to make her successful. So I benefited really early on in my career from having an ally. In the middle point in my career, I found myself being pigeonholed. The headhunters were seeing me as a food finance specialist. And I'm thinking, well, there are only 4 companies in the UK that really do that. And I just didn't want to be narrowed down. So the best advice I can give people is keep broadening yourself out, because you really benefit from that later on in your career. I was lucky enough to have a really superb coach who made me think differently. And we were talking about getting onto the executive board, and I was really frustrated. I felt like I'd been doing everything right and hadn't quite made it. She said, how many people round the board table would sponsor you onto that board? And I'd never thought of it like that. I thought you just had to be good at your job. I thought, well, maybe 3 out of 12 would positively sponsor me and lend me their brand, and the rest were probably ambivalent. And actually that made me work much harder at forming those peer relationships so that everyone was genuinely a sponsor. When I was moving from being a finance director to being a chief operating officer at TSB, and I actually did the stereotypical woman thing. I listed out the 10 things on the job description, and I thought, well, I can only do 5 of those, so clearly I can't do this job. Fortunately, my second thought was, well, the next person on the list I know they're going to ask, who happens to be a guy, but he could do 5 things, the different 5 to me, but he still didn't have everything on the list. And just going through that, I thought, well, actually, I'm going to go for this job, and I'm going to put scaffolding around me. So the 5 things that are not my core strengths, I'm going to say I want to be able to have someone really good in the role supporting me on that, or I want extra coaching, or I want extra training. How am I going to fill those gaps? And that idea of putting scaffolding around yourself has really been helpful to me.